Welcome back everybody, Captain Gino here. This is the fishing report for January 2024. We're going to talk about how the chain's fishing, why the chain's fishing the way it's fishing, and how to fish it each area. I'm going to try and break down this chain for you as short and sweet as possible, help you wrap your head around what's happening on the chain, what to expect in the next coming weeks, coming days, and even coming months. It is a trend, a pattern that will just be repeated over and over and over again. There's certain things you need to look for, certain things you need to watch for. I'm going to go over those and help save you some time while you're out here fishing the chain and help you catch more fish and bigger fish. Now, January 24th, 2024, it's 11 p.m., full moon's 25th. Guys, and girls, if you're getting out there and you're thinking, I missed it, I can't believe it, it's a full moon, how come there's like no fish left on beds? There is a lot to digest there and a big explanation why, and you didn't miss it, so stay tuned. We're going to talk about all that. Big shout out to Laramie Strickland. The last tournament on the chain was the BFL, which was on the 20th, being 4 days ago. It took 13 pounds, y'all, to get in the top 10 right around the spawn on the Harris chain. That should tell you a lot. 13 pounds top 10. The week prior, 12 pounds got you a top 10 in the ABA season opener here on the chain, which would have been the 13th of January. Shout out to Mark Pizer there. He took first with 27 pounds, but again, 12 pounds to get in the top 10. It dropped from 27 to 17th for second place. The BFL, 20 pounds first. I believe your top 4 boats had 19, around 19. You had the Stalvey, father and son, slid in there with around 19 pounds as well. That leads right into how the chain's fishing. It's fishing very small. There's a big disparity in bags. If you see there, top 10 finish, 13 pounds. January 20th, top 10 finish, 12 pounds, the 13th. I'm out here all the time, I promise you. It's like 0 to 0 and it's a grind, and there's very few places. It is fishing very small. That is how the chain's fishing, small. If I could describe it in more than word, very small. Why it's fishing that way? You have changes in water level right now. We've had some gnarly fronts come through here. You got areas that have been clean 2 days ago, 3 days ago. They're now dirty and rising and falling water throughout. The water levels are controlled on the chain. Right now, it seems like Griffin's on the rise and Eustace is on the fall. If you want the technical data, I'll have that in the links. I'm gonna have links for the water flows, the water levels, the water quality and water clarity. Like the most important thing is gonna be your flows, levels, and clarity, because it's gonna help determine what these fish are doing. There's some little nuances there and we'll talk about that as well. But yeah, that's why it's fishing. Guys, if you're watching videos from a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months, it's completely different fishery. A lot of the grass is gone. There's a lot of misleading videos out there, guys. A lot of guys are like, 30-pound bag on the chain, this, that. It's not on the chain. Not a chain that's accessible to you in a tournament, or I, or anybody else. They're talking about Lake Yale. So just know that's a completely different animal. If you're looking in this water and you're like, man, I don't recognize it, you're not going to find it anywhere unless you trail her up and go somewhere else. Anyways, that's ridiculous. So with that being said, that's not the chain. That is technically, but usually you can't fish it. So again, water levels, water clarity, the temps are all over the place on the chain. We'll go over that here in just a second. And a lot of the grass is gone that was there previously, and these fish are moving a lot, and they're moving a lot for a good reason. If you're not from Florida, if you're not from around here, if you don't understand the spawn, if you get spun out this time of year, this is going to help you out a ton. Florida fish, unlike most fish, spawn, the females spawn over and over and over again throughout the spawn. This goes on for like 5 months, 6 months sometimes. And guys and girls, y'all are used to, northern strain bass. Your spawn is super defined, and it goes on for a few weeks and then it's over. Whereas we've had waves of spawners pulling up since November, and it's constant. And what causes that? When that water temperature starts dropping down this time of year and then it starts to warm lead into a full moon, it's lights out. Now, if it drops and starts to warm and it's not leading to a full moon, you're still gonna find places that are going off. And there's some areas like the spring canals where they're just like constantly it's going down. Obviously, when the weather lines up right and the temps line up right, you're gonna get a big wave of fish coming from the main lake versus fish that are just hanging out in those springs. But y'all, I promise you, it's constantly going down in those areas. So, with that being said, that causes big movements in the fish. Changes in water levels causes big movements in fish, and recently muddied up water really makes the fishing tough. That's why there's a big disparity in bags. There's only a few places right now producing these bags, and there's a lot that goes into that, but we're not gonna go too deep. I'm just gonna tell you what's hot, what's not, right? The details don't really matter. The only thing that matters is what's really going down on the chain, right? So There's some sneaky approaches, y'all that are fishing tournaments, y'all that are just out there trying to catch a giant. I'll talk about how to accomplish that. So let's talk a little bit about how each lake's fishing, and we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, how to approach those areas as well. So I'm going to kind of run through the list of the lakes as we go through the lakes and rivers areas. I'll talk about, you know, how I would fish them, you know, and I'm going to give you my top picks for the chain as well. Like if I had to pick 1 or 2 lakes or 3 lakes, I'll give you my top picks, right? So starting with the Ocklawaha, that's going to be the furthest north. That's the river. A lot of these tournaments, you're not going to be allowed to go, you know, past the lock or to the lock or maybe past the boat ramp there. But oftentimes, and check your rules, it's super important. Guys and gals that aren't fishing tournament, doesn't matter. So, you know, we'll talk about from the lock south. You'll notice when you get out of the north end of the Ocklawaha is positioned north on the north end of Griffin, and that is going to flow into the St. Johns River there, Rodman and the St. Johns. It is north on Lake Griffin, and you're going to find it's pretty green water as you get in. There's some incredible, there's eelgrass everywhere. There's some hydrilla here. There's a kind of a defined channel in certain areas when it gets skinny, but when it's real wide in the beginning, it's not real defined. It's kind of flat everywhere. Stay off the points there in the beginning. It can get shallow. The water's up now, but it can get shallow. But you'll find there's going to be eelgrass for submergent vegetation. That's going to be the primary vegetation you're going to find there. Lots of sandbars and shell bars. And then the sides of that river, you're going to find both lilies, spatterdock, arrowheads, sawgrass, maiden cane, all down the edges there. As it narrows up, I really like where it narrows up a little bit. It'll kind of maybe a mile up. It's going to narrow up just a little bit. Not completely narrow like it is at the bridge, but it's going to narrow up some. And there's beautiful flats that come off the main river channel there. And those flats have a lot of eelgrass, peppergrass, like native hardy grasses that are great to fish with a chatterbait, a rattle trap, top water. And then it's going to run into some lily pads and some maiden canes there. It is this time of year, flipping that stuff is absolutely incredible. And in addition, fishing the flats for fish that are staging, post spawners, fry garters, things like that. A lot of times I'll just start at the dirt up against the sawgrass and maiden cane, whatever, and then I'll work my way out depending on what's happening, what the fish are telling me that day. That water is going to be pretty clear green, like a stained green color. As you progress north, there's a series of canals on the right-hand side. Crystal clear water, you know, lily pads, overhanging trees, incredible sight fishing. Like really good. There's fish on beds in there right now. It is really good. As you continue to move north, you're going to find that it's going to get narrower and turn blacker. You know, buzzing frogs, buzz baits, flipping and pitching. Guys and gals, I hate to break it to you, but there's a lot of fishing pressure on the chain. If you can get away with flip fishing fluorocarbon, you're going to get more bites. Because if you can get away with it, you know, there's a higher chance that, you know, sparse grass, something like that. These fish are going to feel that line, see that line. Just trust me. If you can go down a line, do it. If you're fishing thicker stuff, it doesn't matter. You can throw braid, but a lot of really good flipping and pitching this time of year up in there. Not a whole lot of sight fishing unless you get on those little canals there. Pretty simple. It's a river system, and it's controlled water levels too. So moving south, we're going to talk about the marshes. And you got marshes like off of Haynes Creek south, and there's marshes in the Yale Canal, which is the furthest canal in the northeast corner. That will take you back to the bigger marsh there, where there's actually a boat ramp in that particular marsh, which is nice. The marshes are going to be like a completely different animal on their own. They're crystal clear water, especially in the north of the marsh off the Yale Canal. They're really, really clear. Mostly 4 to 6 foot, hydrilla everywhere. You're going to find some spatterdock, some lilies. There's going to be some cattails around the edges, around the levees. And how that sets, it's basically the same depth everywhere. There's a few small differences. And it's really hard to get through with a trolling motor. You cannot have a motor over 40 horsepower. You will, if you're fishing a tournament, you're going to get DQ'd. Someone's going to say something somewhere. Fishing game's always out there. The duck hunters are out there right now. But yeah, crystal clear water, and then it's divided by levees. If you look on Google Earth, you'll see that there's, you know, basically a T of levee. You got a levee that runs right down the middle from the boat ramp all the way down north to south. East to west, you have another levee that comes in as a T. And those levees, for me, I like to this time of year be as close to where these fish are going to stage and spawn as possible, so I'll run those levees. It's really good to fish it with swimming a speed worm, you know, California 420, green pumpkin, watermelon red, June bug, you can just swim it, throw it out there and chunk it in one like a spinnerbait. You can fish it up top weightless like a buzz bait, and you can throw it on the bottom. You're gonna see a lot of the lily pads and all this stuff, and you're gonna be focused to be there. Just know it's gonna be hard on your trolling motor, hard to get to a lot of that stuff. A lot of the hydrilla is topped out, and it can be gnarly. Now there are some, what I would like to call pools, where there's like holes in the hydrilla, and there's open water, more sparse hydrilla. Really good to fish those areas for staging fish, but the easiest thing is to run levees, just levee to levee. You can look for fish on the beds on those limestone levees while you're catching fish that are moving around. Little 3.75 inch Kitex, 4.75 inch Kitex working right now, real good. When it gets real windy and choppy in there, a chatterbait. And believe it or not, a lot of guys freak out about this. Like I was out with a client Wednesday, it was like 40 degrees out, freezing cold. I had to stop halfway down the lake because I thought I was gonna die. I just don't do good in the cold. We get into the marsh, and you know, it's like, man, it's like a barren wasteland. But I know these fish get really grouped together this time of year, and you just, it's a literally, the name of the game is to move, and it changes constantly, and I'll explain why here in just a second. But we get into an area, and they're blowing up on a devil's horse. It's 59-degree water temp, 40 degrees out, freezing cold. You'd never think top water, and they were absolutely blowing that thing out of the water. And that's because you still got fish spawning in areas no matter what. So with that being said, knowing that our fish spawn over and over during the spawn, those water temps are so different. Like on the water today, the 24th January, 59 degrees on one end of the marsh, 53 degrees on the other end. I was showing a client, we're getting ready for a tournament. North end of northeast side of Griffin, 60 degrees, northwest, 64 degrees, south end, 65, 68 in some areas, 69. And this doesn't count canals or springs or anything like this. I'm talking main lake stuff. Same thing went on in the canals. There's certain canals that are at 59, that tells these fish pre-spawn. You got canals are 68, that's post-spawn. You got canals 63, 64, they're just pulling up on there. It's crazy. But with water temperatures varying like that throughout the chain, it really makes these fish move around a lot, man. And when you get that, it's cold for a few nights, and then that wind blows out of the north and it blows that cold water down south, that makes that huge difference, like 10-degree difference in water temperature. That changes the dynamic in those areas completely. So you can be there and then come back 4 days later and everything's different. The water's all dirty, it's cold, and you can't buy a strike, and you wonder, man, did a bunch of boats come through here and just catch all these fish? It's probably not the case. It's probably that. So that is gonna be the name of the game from lake to lake, is to keep in mind the water temperatures that these fish are gonna be pulling up. These are Florida bass. Don't pull in and see a bunch of empty beds and think it's over. I mean, we covered so many dang canals. We trailed it up today, and we found fish locked on. We found fish post-spawn. We found fish pulling up. There's canals we went in, there'd be like whole groups of fish in it with a bunch of beds that were just, you know, they're there 3 or 4 days ago. They're wrapped up, and a bunch of fry garters around, stuff like that. There'd be 4 or 5 females rolling through these crystal clear canals. So that is why it changes constantly. With that being said, back to the marsh, devil's horse, small jerkbait, like a baby, a daggone mega bass junior, right? 110 junior. Works really well, but it doesn't have to be that. Just any smaller jerkbait, any smaller swim bait. As far as devil's horse goes, color-wise, it can be, you know, gold black, silver black. It could be semi-translucent. It can have a perch color, a little bit of orange on the belly, a little bit of red on the belly. Doesn't seem to matter. You pick your poison. For me, on the calmer days, I like either the traditional devil's horse, the skinnier one, a spin rocket, the Rapala, you know, something with that skinnier profile. And if it gets a little bit windier out, I'll go to the larger profile Smithwick devil's horse, the thicker one. Just displaces more water. If it gets even choppier than that, I feel like I'm not getting it done, I'll go to that chatterbait in there and crush them. You know, black, blue, green pumpkin. If it's real calm and you want to throw something a little sneakier, fluorocarbon on a swim jig, fantastic. As far as like fishing the beds and the levees, it's really good to have a glide bait or a big swim bait, something that's got some drawing power. So like if you're unsure about whether there's a female or not, throw that sucker up there. She's gonna show herself at some point in time. And flip it on the beds, I just like to throw a small swim bait, like a little skinny dipper, 3 So Marsh being one of my top picks for the chain, by the way. Griffin being one of my top picks, the Aquawaha top picks, and Apopka, as far as like just going fishing and catching them. However, if I'm in the marsh, outside of the morning bite throwing top water, I'm gonna be on them levees looking for them staging fish. And I'm gonna be looking for birds and fish activity close by. I wanna stay as close to these spawning areas as possible, knowing that these water temperatures are that far off and these fish are in so many different stages. I want to put myself in those positions where I have a high probability of finding success day after day. Just know, no matter how many days you're out here, in some of these areas, it's going to be forever changing, right? Griffin, man, 2 days ago, northeast corner was clean, northwest corner was clean, down south was pretty clean. All of a sudden, boom, you got water coming in all over the place, coming out of Haynes Creek, which is clean usually because it's running across grass and stuff like that, but it still moves things around. We've had a lot of rain, a lot of wind. The ditches, water was coming out of the ditch. It was all, you know, muddied up down south. It really changed the dynamics down in Griffin. Completely different fishery than it was a couple days ago. Again, expected 10-degree water temperature swing from one end to the other. Canals, you'd see 10-degree variance. You'd see fish that were post-spawn, spawn, and pre-spawn. With that being said, all those little weird things sticking up out of the water on the north end, all over Griffin, all over the chain, but especially on Griffin, you'll see like little bamboo shoots or red pipe or white pipe or something like that. That's where the shiner guys, the guys that are catching wild shiner, which are the big gold things here in Florida, they're throwing chicken scratch out in the morning, baiting those areas in, they're running a line, and then come back and netting them all. If you look right where it drops on the northeast side of Griffin, right where, like, you'll see like a clear water line and a dark water line coming out of Yale Canal, and then maybe 100 yards from that, you'll start seeing shiner markers. I look at that as a road. I just put my boat in between and work around. I find that right now, standalone peppergrass, standalone eelgrass, standalone hydrilla, obviously there's fish on it, not great, but when I got that mixture of like eelgrass and hydrilla, which generally represents some sort of depth change, I seem to be getting more bites there. And then definitely there's always, like, I do better when I get close to the shiner markers, and they're on a specific contour as well, moving around, and the shiners are spawning right now. Same thing goes to the northwest corner, only that stuff is really close to a bunch of spawning areas. I really like that northwest side. You got the island just south of that working your way south. Gets a lot of good current going through there. There's birds diving everywhere today. There's big schools up north and big schools down south on Griffin. The south end fishes a little deeper than the north end. The canal's a little bit more spread out down south. There's like something like 35, 36 canals on Griffin. There's a bunch of them, and a lot of them are crystal clear. But it lends itself to fantastic spawn fishing, some of the best bed fishing on the chain. It lends itself to one of the better offshore bites currently on the chain. You can catch them offshore in Griffin right now. It's good. But you know, if you're going to be offshore, 5 to 7 foot of water, it seems to be the sweet spot around the majority of the lakes. Until you get down south, then you're looking, you know, 8 to 10 and 6 foot, you know, right on that edge of the, not the visible emergent grass, but the submergent grass off of the Kissimmee grass or maiden cane or whatever. It'll be eelgrass, a lot of times shell leading up to that, pepper grass, stuff like that. Those fish are somewhere like that shell to there. So like basically a couple boat lengths from the boat, from the, you know, emergent grass. It gets a lot deeper, a lot faster down south. And you'll find, you know, when you get to the state park, it's like black water. Another thing that's real kind of crazy about, and this is going to be uniform across the chain. Like if I'm in the canals, I'm throwing green pumpkin. I'm on the main lake, I'm throwing something dark, you know, candy bug, red bug, June bug red, June bug. I go for the marsh, I got to retie. I go into the main lake, I got to retie. I go to the south end of the main lake, I got to retie. Go into the canals, I got to retie. It's the dynamics different. You'll see when you get out there. Some of these canals are crystal clear. Some of them are black water. The lake's primarily green to clear. You know, state parks, black water. The marsh is crystal clear, but we're black bottom. So when you catch a bass there, it's black. When you catch a bass on the main lake, it's white. You know, it's the forage looks different in all those areas, and you have to address it accordingly. So with that being said, Griffin, great mix of offshore right now. Obviously, shallow stuff's going good because of the spawn. Depends on the day. It's looking a lot better than it has in the past year or two. So if you're there last year and had a hard time, it's a lot better. Same thing goes for the marsh. The marsh is fishing better now than it has been in the last couple of years. The last year that it fished really good, I guess Strickland, the one just won this tournament, won over there, and then it just really got banged up. And he was in there alone by himself. Like nobody knew what was going on over there. There was a handful of guys, but I was in there guiding that day, and I was like, I didn't even know who he was at the time. I'm like, man, that guy's gonna win. I had a client, she caught a couple 8-pounders that day or whatever. But yeah, Griffin, definitely one of my top picks. Marsh, definitely one of my top picks. Ocklawaha is definitely up there. Eustis and Big Harris, these are my babies. These are like where I spend the majority of my time. I hate them right now. Like Eustis is fishing crappy. Big Harris is fishing crappy. A lot of the grass that was there is no longer there. It's fishing small. With that being said, like these past couple major events, I've been out there either guiding or filming, and there's like 3 boats in Harris, 3 boats in Eustis, like maybe 10 boats, I'm sorry. But all kind of like Lakeshore Drive, a couple in front of Haynes Creek. With that being said, it's sneaky, man. It is sneaky. Like, you can still get on a bag in there, albeit it's not as consistent as some of these places I'm telling you before. If you're looking for big girls, you can get all alone really fast over there. Spring Canals, Palakalaha River, White House Canal, 9th Street Canal. Some really good main lake stuff where there's no docks interrupting you for sight fishing. Like, you can get behind the Kissimmee grass, like that brown grass that is emergent grass that comes out of the water, especially when you get down on the southwest side going towards 27. You can get back there and there's no docks interrupting you, so you can just get down. And there's fry garters everywhere, so I like to throw like flukes and small square bills and stuff, top water, all back in between like the cypress and the Kissimmee grass. But really sneaky stuff. You know, miles and miles of bed fishing. So if I was going to fish Harris, because it's fishing like crap right now, like to catch a consistent big bag of fish out there, forget it. But I will go sight fish there. There's still giants in those canals. I know there's big talk of like fish kills and this and that. There's a lot that goes into that. Too much to unpack in this video, and it's nobody's fault. It's just a lot that goes on. Anyways, Little Harris, same deal. Fishing like crap as a whole, but there's some good sight fishing. White House Canal being one of the places, Double Run being another place. A lot of good main lake stuff. If you get down south moving east, like, you know, south of the island there, south of the 19 bridge, and kind of move east down that shoreline, if you get behind the Kissimmee grass, even away, especially away from the houses where you can get uninterrupted and just cruise, there's some really good stuff. And the fish will spawn, depending how clear it is, either like in the sparse Kissimmee grass or like right up against the bank. But look for areas that are sunny. If you see a stretch that's like mostly shade, but there's some sun, just go to those sunny areas. These fish are unreal. Like I was with a guy and I was trying to show him like the sneakier areas. And like when you pull into an area and there'll be beds all down, you know, an open shoreline, and it's obvious they're there. And then you see all these trees and there's shade and there's like just a couple beams of light coming through. These fish are smart. They'll get on those beds. And some of your bigger fish are there. They're in sneaky places. They're behind vines. It's just super crazy, but bass are efficient. They know they need a couple days for these eggs to hatch. They need light penetration. They're good to go. Obviously, there's other things that can go into that. You can have falling water temps, rising water, things like that. That's why these Florida bass have to constantly spawn. With that being said, very sneaky. There is good, there's a little bit of hydrilla behind Long Island. There's a little bit up on the north. If you're looking on Big Harris and you're looking north to south, Johnson's Point's on the western side. So you're going to take Johnson's Point on the south end of Johnson's Point, moving west towards Venetian Gardens. There's some hydrilla there. You can get on a decent bag inconsistently over there. It is really hard. That area got hammered for a while and it wasn't like the best area to begin with. But that is some hydrilla on the lake. The rest is going to be eelgrass. With that being said, super sneaky. Get away from everybody else. If I got to go to Eustis, or if I got to go to Big Harris, if I got to go to Little Harris, it's the same deal all the way around. I'm going sight fishing, whether it's main lake or whether it's the canals. Big Harris, Spring Canals, Palakalaha, Eustis, Clear Canals, Gator Hole, Little Harris, you got White House Canal, you got Double Run, you got behind on the main lake stuff. Watch your water temps, watch water clarity. It's huge. There's a big difference from one end of the lake to the other. Moving into Dora. Dora is beautiful. There's tons of emergent grass and submergent grass. There's good hydrilla, there's good eelgrass. All the way around the lake. Anywhere you go, you're going to find grass. You get in Dora from the Dora Canal and hang a right, there's going to be eelgrass. There's going to be pepper grass. You're going to have emergent grass as well. You're going to see a lot of Kissimmee grass. Not a lot of canals that are clear, that are viable for bed fishing. Most of the bed fishing is going to be main lake. The bite offshore there has been mediocre at best. You can catch a ton of fish, catching that quality. It hasn't been there recently. I think that's just due to fishing pressure. You can fish beaches in some areas, like the areas where there's, you know, basically nothing but leading up to sand. You can fish docks. The docks on the north end are absolutely incredible. All the pinches, all the bottlenecks, there's shell, there's eelgrass, hydrilla, a ton of hydrilla northeast, you know, by the fish attractors there. And obviously the cut going from Beauclair to Dora is like dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens and dozens of turning to one big bags have come out of there. It's a very small space. It gets very crowded very fast. And if that's your only spot, you're in trouble. But if that's your only spot and you get there, you got a good shot at winning. It can be absolutely incredible. There is giants there. When you're seeing these mega bags periodically pop up here, oftentimes it's there or Apopka. So with that being said, Dora is going to be like a green stained color, not a lot of canal bed fishing, but lots of main lake stuff, lots of grass. You know, look to target it from your offshore grass. Like I got some offshore grass and shell, like eel grass, where it's like 3 foot of water, 4 foot of water. And then there's stuff all the way out to 10 foot. So, you know, northeast corner is going to fish a little deeper. The further south you go, the closer you get to Dora Canal, the dirtier it gets, because the water is going to be moving that way, you know, from Apopka, Beauclair, Dora, into Eustis, through Haynes Creek, into Griffin, Ocklawaha, and then out to the river to the ocean, hasta la vista. So, with that being said, the southeast side is clearer, you know, going into Beauclair versus the north shore of Dora. Really good, obviously, main lake beds, good docks. All the bottlenecks are great. Moving all the way west, northwest, where the Dora Canal comes in, that would be like the dirtier end of the lake. The trailer park canal's right there. Beauclair has cleaned up a lot here recently. It's not as clean as it has been in the past, but it's definitely much cleaner than it has been in the last few months. It is not fishing great. You know, there's a lot of fish in there, but it's been getting hammered, so it's really hard to get those big bites consistently. The fish really have to be firing off for it to happen. It doesn't have a lot of sight fishing as far as canals go. There's some good main lake stuff. But really, it's been kind of mini bag city over there. You catch a ton. It's hard to catch the big ones, and they're just in a funk, and they will fire up. But with fishing pressure, rising water levels, dropping water temps, you got a lot of fish that are in between right now. But those of y'all that are going to be fishing like on the 9th, 8th, 9th in Big Bass Tour, based on what I can see with current weather here, it should fire. These lakes should fire. Around the board. You should see another big wave of spawners getting ready to pull up, as it usually does. Whenever Big Bass Tour comes, you just know the bed fishing is going to be good. Those guys do a really good job of kind of placing those dates right where it needs to be. Despite all the fishing pressure, you'll see a lot of big fish being caught. Carlton, Soup Bowl, Maiden Cane, Kissimmee grass, cattails, arrowheads make up most of your emergent grass, with some lilies and some spatterdock, not a ton. On the far eastern side, I guess it'd be southeastern side, you have a little inflow of water from Lake Ola, which it's not accessible by boat. And then on the western end of it there is how you would get into Horseshoe. Horseshoe is a shallow tannic water lake, like a dark black, clear black, average 4 foot depth, a lot of soft bottoms, spatterdock, some sight fishing, sneaky. Little lake. It's fantastic, but outside of that, there's not a whole lot of changes. All your shell and stuff will lead up from like 12 foot, 13 foot, all the way right up to the Kissimmee grass, the eelgrass edges, which are in like 6 foot of water generally. So you'll see like the emergent Kissimmee grass, like the brown grass or buggy whips, whatever. And then, you know, that's going to end into some eelgrass almost all the way around the lake. And then right off into some shell or some sand in like 6 foot of water, 7 foot of water. But that's just Soup Bowl all the way around. Good quality fish there, a lot of fishing pressure. It's like just a boat parade that just goes around and around and around and around. Now you can get in some of the deeper stuff and kind of chase these suspended fish, which oftentimes happen when you get a lot of fishing pressure. Just really tricky. Really hard to sight fish there. Not a lot, but lend itself to sight fishing real good. Moving down to the big beast of Lake Apopka. I feel like it's important to state, to get to Griffin, the marsh and the Ocklawaha from Harris, you're going to have to lock through Haynes Creek at the Burrell Lock and Dam. Same goes for Apopka, only you're going to have to go through the Apopka lock. Guys here, the locks on the chain are small. It depends on the lock you're talking about. Apopka lock, one of the smaller ones. Burrell Lock and Dam fits a lot more boats. Apopka's small. And as long as the water levels are okay, you are safe to run on a pad, you know, as long as it's legal. But make sure you stay in the middle. If you've ever seen it in low water, as you get close to the lock there's a lot, just like lay down tree after lay down tree, you will bust your boat up. But the water's not low like right now, just stay in the middle. But keep an eye on the water levels. Again, I'll keep those links down in the description. It'll have like current pool, you know, your normal, past, and your water flows, etc. It'll all be there. All good stuff. So Apopka sets up pretty easy, the majority of which it's going to be emergent vegetation you're going to be fishing. You're going to be fishing arrowheads, you're going to be fishing buggy whips, you're going to be fishing cattails, things like that. and she's the most fickle. Like, she gets gnarly after cold fronts, and the bite can slow down a lot, but she has like the most fish over on 16-inch fish per square acre, more than any lake on the chain. I can go there and catch way more fish than just about anywhere else I can fish on the chain. It's also like the riskiest run. It's hard to get down there, and she's fickle. She'll like bite you, man. She'll bite you. She's either gonna love you or hate you. And it doesn't fish real big. You know, look in the lake north to south, Lake Apopka, and it's gonna be mostly like very low visibility. You know, let's call it like inches to a couple feet. Green water primarily, with a little bit of clean water in certain areas. But we're gonna start down south. Oakland Winter Garden area, fantastic. Montverde, but south side of Montverde, all the way into the gourd, which is going to be like that little appendix looking deal that comes off the southwest corner. There's a spring back there. That fish is a little different than everywhere else. Obviously you have the spring, it's deeper water. The edges of the spring are going to be real soft sediment stuff, with the limestone and shell leading into the spring, moving from, like, let's call it moving southwest into that gourd, into the spring. You'll have limestone as you lead in. Coming out, there's some pretty distinct points in the Oakland area. There's state place brush piles there. There's also some like random brush piles out there that people have placed or they've landed out there. Halfway in between the first major point there in Oakland and like where the actual spring is itself, there's some really good stretches there of like dollar pads of smaller lilies and pencil reeds, docks, and a lot of little shell and little brush piles kind of out in the main channel there. Continuing east into the Winter Garden area, you're going to find it's going to be primarily flipping. But that's that whole stretch down there is fire all the way to Crown Point, like moving all the way west to Crown Point of Winter Garden. Like the eastern side of Winter Garden would be Crown Point. You're going to find that the round reeds have generally sandy bottom. You will deal a lot of sediment over there. I like to throw like a drop shot if I'm dealing with that and I'm trying to, you know, something slow and low, or just flipping and pitching creatures and craws. Something dark, something black, something blue, something black, blue, red. I mean black, red. Red shad, red shad is my favorite color out there. Period, hands down. Tequila is real good too. But yeah, so from that point there where those brush piles are at, moving east, the most of it's going to be emergent vegetation that you're going to be focused on there. When you get around some of the docks there on the south end, moving from Oakland to Winter Garden, you will find some really nice shell leading up to the Kissimmee grass. Those areas do lend themselves to moving baits a little bit better. Same thing for the brush piles. Continuing east, north, Paradise Heights, huge hot spot. A lot of flipping, pitching. You're going to see like sparse lily pads are kind of out and away, but really good flipping, pitching stuff over there. But it'll be hot and then it'll shut off on you. And that's just because these fish are in all different stages throughout the chain. Like we talked about earlier, same thing, maybe recently muddy. Lake Apopka the pump house by Wildlife Drive, which would be northeast side. Another really good stretch in there. You'll see a lot of offshore hydrilla, cattails, things like that. Focus on those areas, flipping, pitching being the deal out there. Something dark, something slow, something you can smack them in the head with. Always does good on Apopka. That's my favorite spots. I mean, maybe like when you get around Ferndale northwest, but you know, just moving a little bit north of Montverde, there's some good stretches in there. But outside of that, man, it's hard pressed to catch fish elsewhere. The canal system coming from Apopka, going back into Beauclair, I forgot to touch base on that. Lots of good sight fishing, lots of little outflows and little sneaky stuff coming out. It's stained water in there, you know, buzz baits, flipping, pitching, fantastic. Small square bills, fantastic. I like small square bills in the majority of the canals. With that being said, that is going to wrap up the majority of the chain. Obviously, there's a lot of little things here and there I left out. Just know that the canals are going to be much different than the main lakes. You're going to find canals that are black to clear, like tannic water to crystal clear water, spring-fed canals. Watch your water temperatures, watch water clarity. Very important how clear the water is in an area leading up to your event. Those temps are important to know whether these fish are going to lock on, if they're going to be post-spawn, whatever. Stay flexible, stay fluid. Links down in the description for water flows free, water levels free, quality free, clarity free, it's cost you none. This is all state of Florida stuff. However, if you want a more in-depth, like if you've watched the series on the chain, if you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out, breaking down the entire chain. A lot of good stuff there. For Fishnology members, It's $20 a month. All the waypoints come with that stuff. Live Q&As come with that. Lake breakdowns. I run through lake by lake by lake doing in-depth breakdowns. Tons of waypoints to brush and shell, spawning areas. I mean, the juice, everything you need, soup to nuts. Save yourself the gas, save yourself time. Check us out. You can cancel anytime. Links down in the description. I know this was a long one, but it's long overdue. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for your continued support. I really do appreciate y'all. Go bust them up. Get on some big fish. Till next time, tight lines.